Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, a Malian extremist who pleads guilty to the destruction of ancient shrines is given a 9-year sentence by the ICC. It's the first time that the destruction of cultural heritage has been heard as a war crime. Also, as conservationists from around the world gather in Johannesburg to discuss the care of endangered animals, we take a closer look at the effects some of the decisions taken so far could have on the fate of the African elephant. And in DR Congo, authorities alarmed at the rate at which a cholera epidemic is spreading are taking emergency measures. It's moving unusually quickly. An estimated 18,000 people have been infected this year alone. But first, a Malian man's been sentenced to 9 years by the International Criminal Court for his part in the wrecking of ancient shrines in Timbuktu in 2012. It's the first time a war crimes case that focused on the destruction of cultural heritage. Rights groups are hoping that Amel Al-Faki Al-Mahdi's sentence will help stop the targeting of historic sites in conflicts, devastation that almost always goes unpunished.
The court will now ask the defendant to rise.
Prosecutors had demanded a sentence of 9 to 11 years in jail.
Mr. Al-Mahdi, the crime which you have been convicted of is of significant gravity. The chamber unanimously sentences you to 9 years of imprisonment.
That sentence took into account Al-Mahdi's expression of remorse and his cooperation with authorities. He had faced a possible sentence of 30 years for involvement in the destruction of World Heritage Site mausoleums in Timbuktu in Mali, dating from the 14th and 15th centuries.
Mr. Al-Mahdi personally participated in the destruction of at least 5 of the sites. Moreover, he justified the necessity of the attack by writing a sermon that was read before the attack and by giving public speeches as the destructions were occurring. The chamber did not
It is a
find
historic
any
ruling,
aggravating
the first one based on cultural destruction as a war crime, and the first guilty verdict against a Muslim extremist. Revered as a centre of Islamic learning in centuries past, Timbuktu in northern Mali is known as the city of 333 saints. Mahdi and his Ansar Deen group began destroying shrines when they took control of the city in 2012.
My first feeling, of course, is of justice. It is that impunity should not be the answer to the destruction of cultural heritage. On the other side, I think it is justice also for the local people, for the local communities in Timbuktu.
All right.
Al-Mahdi was arrested in 2014 by French troops. During his trial, he urged Muslims around the world not to commit acts similar to those he committed.
Look now at some news in brief. The Nigerian army's denied reports that Boko Haram militants have retaken 3 northeastern villages near Chibok, the town from which hundreds of girls were notoriously abducted in 2014. The extremists are said to have hoisted their flags in the communities. Last year, the army retook much of the territory that the group seized, and it's been battling to overcome what's left of the insurgency. Somalia has pushed back upcoming elections to the 30th of November. Parliamentary polls will now happen between October 23rd until November 10th. The delays have been put down to security and administrative problems. Somalia sank into a devastating civil war in 1991, and elections are key to efforts to rebuild. The votes are likely to face disruption from Al-Shabaab extremists. Gabonese President Ali Bongo was sworn in for a second term on Tuesday, despite unrest and international scrutiny of his razor-thin win last month. His victory was secured by less than 6,000 votes. Despite international concern about anomalies and protests against his staying on, several African leaders, including those from Mali, Togo and Niger, attended his inauguration. Bongo's family has run the country for almost 5 decades. As the International Conservation Conference CITES continues in Johannesburg, parties from most countries in the world have been discussing how to tackle threats by the world's most endangered species. On Tuesday, talks focused on the dangers of exporting African elephants from their natural habitats. A decision was earlier taken to crack down on the legal ivory trade. An exception called the decision-making mechanism had allowed some countries like South Africa and Zimbabwe to continue limited legal trade. But research has suggested that since that loophole was brought in 1997, poaching is up and elephant populations down. I'm joined now by Antoine Mudakikwa from the National Park of Rwanda. Antoine, thanks very much for speaking to us. Now, first of all, why shouldn't some countries trade ivory legally if they feel that their populations of animals can stand it?
Good evening, Georgia. Thank you very much for your question. I don't think that it's such kind of question that we could probably ask to me. But I think the point is that in 2007, we have a very big argument on the 20 years moratorium that we as an African Elephant Coalition requested. After a lot of long discussion, we came to a consensus of 9 years. So the 9 years are coming to an end on this COP, and because of that, some of the countries have, we should recognize, a very wealthy population in terms of number, think that they can request to do a kind of trade on the part of the elephant. But under the African Elephant Plan, we think that it's not the appropriate time, and in addition to what the Standing Committee have decided recently on its last session, it was really an assessment that we could not really come to an agreement because nothing could be done. That's why the two proposals that were proposed, one from African Elephant.
Antoine, so basically there is not agreement as to whether ivory legal. There is some concern that legal ivory trading actually has a big impact on poaching for African elephants. Tell us a bit more about how strong that link is.
The point is that until we can have a system, a mechanism that can have a way of tracing legal ivory or natural ivory that can be from a natural death, distinguished from an ivory who's illegal, it's very difficult to accept any mechanism. And this has been really clear that we were not able to establish such kind of mechanism. That's why the two proposals were rejected yesterday.
So why has it taken such a long time for a firm stance to be taken on the question of whether or not legal ivory should be allowed? A legal ivory trade should be allowed?
As I say, we, under the African Elephant Plan, we have established a very strong objective that we need to establish a mechanism. And this mechanism, up to now, has never been established. Nothing can be really shown how we can have a way of distinguishing illegal to legal or in natural death.
Thank you very much, Antoine Mudakikwa from the National Park of Rwanda, currently at the CITES conference in Johannesburg. Well, finally, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, authorities alarmed at the rate at which a cholera epidemic is spreading are taking emergency measures. The disease is being passed on unusually quickly. An estimated 18,000 cases have been reported in the country so far this year. Thomas Nicolan sent us this report.
This is a cholera treatment center in the village of Bandaka in the Equator province. Here, the medical team receives new patients on a daily basis. Doctors are doing what they can, but they deplore the lack of awareness on the field.
Taking care of patients that have already caught this disease is all well and good, but that doesn't fix the problem. We need to reinforce awareness beforehand so that people can change their behavior and learn what they can do to avoid getting sick.
Without purified water and proper sanitation, people of Bandaka are at risk. Therefore, various NGOs add chlorine to the water that villagers draw. This is a very simple measure that can save lives.
At first, some people were suspicious of chlorine. But with time, people understood why it's important to add it to the water to prevent cholera.
The epidemic is spreading fast, but the provincial government assures that the situation is getting better.
Things are really looking good. The peak of the epidemic is now behind us, and we hope that with the help of our international partners and agencies, we are going to kick cholera out. Now the situation is getting back to normal, and things are already better.
All eyes are now on Kinshasa, where authorities already documented several deaths and where cholera could wreak havoc. But Congo is not the only country affected by the issue. The epidemic is now cross-border and it's spread to most of the Congo Basin.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us, and please do so again if you can. Take care.
You love watching France 24 in English.
Analysis from France 24. I'm Mark Owen. These are the main world news.
To the border with Algeria.
Huge lines since this morning to answer that question.
But France 24 is also available in French.
14h à Paris, bonjour à tous, bienvenue si vous nous revenez sur France 24 Paris.
And Arabic.
شعبية هذا الباب القادم من أمريكا الجنوبية في ازدياد
Also coming up.
Featured on cable and satellite systems and online media in France and across the world.